Can Jalen Brunson become an all-star starter even if he doesn't finish in the top two in the fan voting? And does he deserve it over LaMelo Ball and Damian Lillard? I'm getting into it right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks a part of your day today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And on today's show, I'm talking All-Star because tonight the All-Star starters get announced. So why not talk about Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns' candidacies, although things seem, I don't want to say locked up, but fairly locked up for Cat. So I'm definitely going to focus more in on Jalen Brunson in today's episode. Talk about his case just first off to make it, if he's got a chance, even if he holds at fourth place in fan voting, which is where he was the last we saw. But then a statistical case versus Damian Lillard and LaMelo Ball, who are the two guys ahead of him that I think are most likely to be on the bubble for starter. I think Donovan Mitchell is pretty clearly going to be in there. And then I want to talk about the new All-Star format. I realize Gavin and I haven't really addressed it yet. I find it kind of interesting, so I want to talk about that in the third segment. But also, if you don't get enough on the podcast today and you want even more Locked On Knicks in your life, you could check out our newsletter because your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Knicks Daily Newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. All right, so let's get into this whole All-Star debate. So where we stand right now, as I said, on TNT tonight, before the slate of games, I think before the slate, maybe in between, whatever, at some point tonight during the TNT broadcast, they will reveal the All-Star starters, which is exciting because there's a very real chance, I think, that two Knicks are going to be announced as starters. Now, of course, maybe doesn't mean quite as much this year as in previous years, considering the new format that I'll get into at the end of the show, which it sort of negates the need for starters, I guess. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But the honor is still there, being announced as starter. So there's a very real chance that both Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns end up as all-star starters. As a reminder of how this whole process works now, it used to just be popular vote by the fans. I don't know how they used to do it, maybe by phone or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they had phone lines you could call in to vote, like back in like the 80s, 90s, whatever. But at this point, it reached a point during the internet age where certain guys would take off, and you would have, guys that were like injured for the whole season, making it as starters just because they had name brand recognition with fans and whatever. So now for the last number of years, the voting has been 50% fan vote, 25% player vote. The players all get a say in it. And then 25% media vote. So it's a little more weighted towards like giving the players that deserve it their shot more, guys that are breakout stars or guys that kind of fly under the radar to the casual fan but are having phenomenal years that are recognized by the players and media get a little more of a shot now. But we've seen fan returns already. So the first fan return, Brunson was actually not doing well at all, and Karl-Anthony Towns was doing well. Brunson has gained ground in each successive fan return. So maybe this whole conversation is moot by the time that the starters get announced. Maybe Brunson has just finished his climb to overtake one of the top spots in the East. Though I don't think it's super likely. I think he could end up with the third spot, which would still place him just outside of starter status with the guards, because only two guards make it and then three bigs. So it could be still an uphill climb for Brunson. But as of the last time we checked in, which was, I think, about a week ago, that that the last returns were announced. Giannis Antetokounmpo was leading the front court at about 3.5 million votes. Jason Tatum had about 2.8 million votes, and then Karl-Anthony Towns was sitting pretty with about 2.5 million votes. The next closest guy was Paolo Banchero with just over 1 million. So a clear delineation there between the top three and then the field. And then for the guards, a lot more close, I think. A lot more of a race here because, again, only 2 spots, but 4 guys with over 1 million votes. LaMelo Ball, I guess due to the viral success of his brother's song, was running away with the fan vote, 1.9 million votes, to be the highest vote getter among all guards not named Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which is crazy. Donovan Mitchell, 1.5 million votes. Damian Lillard, 1.27 million votes. And Jalen Brunson, 1.24 million votes. So a pretty close race there. Then a bit of a drop off after Brunson. Trae Young was 705,000. Maxey was 611,000, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there's a real chance that Brunson overtakes Lillard. He's kind of been storming back on him for a while. In each successive return, he's gotten closer and closer to surpassing Lillard. I don't think it's likely he would pass Mitchell to give him that number 2 spot, and I think Ball has just run away with that number 1 spot. But just for context, last year the overall results in the East. So a little interesting here. First off, Tyrese Halliburton, number 1 in fan vote, player vote, and media vote last year. Not even in the top 10 of player vote of fan vote on the last return. So an interesting fall from grace there for Tyrese Halliburton, I guess. But then Brunson ended up actually tied for second last year, despite the fact that he was 5th in fan vote last year. So Brunson, his final total last year was 1.45 million votes in the fan vote. That placed him solidly behind Halliburton, who had 3.4 million votes. Damian Lillard had 2.2 million votes. Trae Young had slightly more, 2.2 million votes, 2.27 versus 2.24. And then Donovan Mitchell had 1.9 million votes last year. So, and then Brunson was barely ahead of Tyrese Maxey last year in the final voting as well. So he was 5th in the fan vote and yet finished tied for second overall because he came through 3rd in the player vote behind Maxey and Halliburton. And he came in 2nd in media vote last year. So he had the 2nd most votes, and it was not particularly close. It was the most for Halliburton was 97, and then Brunson had 48. Then the next highest was Donovan Mitchell with 25 media votes last year. So he came in very strong in the media vote category. I would project that he will probably do the same thing this year. I think at minimum get 2nd in the media vote. Possibly squeaks out a 1st, but I think that he'll probably get 2nd, and Donovan Mitchell will probably get 1st because I think team success plays a lot into this voting and everything. So I think that will help out Mitchell quite a bit, even though he's having a little bit, I don't want to say a down year statistically, but like he's sacrificing some of his statistics for team success this year, which I think will be rewarded by the media. Also will probably be rewarded by the players. I would imagine that, the players recognize how good the Cavs are and will want to reward Mitchell for that as the leader of that team. So he'll probably finish 1st in player vote. But I think Brunson will probably finish 2nd in both the player and media vote. I can't really, like, Maxey soundly outpaced Brunson in the player vote last year. It was 133 votes for Halliburton, 131 for Maxey, and then 78 for Brunson, who was pretty solidly in 3rd place. But given where the Sixers are at this year, I don't see Maxey getting that. I don't really see Lillard getting that just because, I don't know if the players will vote legacy vote wise, like fans tend to. Trae Young, maybe Trae Young has a bit of a resurgence with the players considering how good his team has been against top teams in the league. I guess we'll see how that all goes. But I think as of right now, I see Brunson probably taking 2nd in the player vote and the media vote. If he can end up with 3rd in the fan vote, I think that gives him a really good chance of being an all-star starter because I don't think LaMelo Ball is going to finish particularly high. He's having a really good statistical year, at least as far as raw stats are concerned, which I'll, kind of detail the case for those 3 guys, Brunson, Ball, and Lillard in the next segment. As far as, where they stack up statistically with one another in a couple different measures that could affect all-star voting. But I think ultimately he's on a lottery team, and those guys, unless they're having crazy transcendent seasons, are not typically going to be voted an all-star starter. So I don't really see the media and the players rallying around LaMelo Ball, especially considering he's missed, I think, like 15 games or so this year so far. So, he's kind of already hovering around, not being able to get the games played minimums and everything for this year, regardless, for awards and stuff like that. I feel like the deck is kind of stacked against him to win any of the other categories enough to make it. But he does have a pretty strong statistical case, so I'll definitely get into that in the next segment as well. But then I'll also just real quick, I mean, because Cat is technically, um, I guess there's technically a world where Cat could end up not an all-star starter, even though he has this stranglehold on the fan vote, and I think has a pretty good stranglehold on the media and player vote as well. I don't know how anyone looks at him and says that he's not one of the three best front court players in the Eastern Conference this year so far. But just out of curiosity, last year he did make the All-Star team, and was 11th in fan vote, and then was 7th in player vote and 9th in media vote last year. So, he didn't particularly finish strong last year, and yet still made it as a reserve. But I think, when you look at it, when you look at the rest of the top guys in the East front court, like Banchero's missed a ton of games. I don't know how he got so many votes. I think it was probably just by virtue of the fact that the the list was sorted when you went to go vote. The list was sorted by points per game and didn't take into account games played for like minimums or anything. And so Banchero's like points per game in his 5 games that he played before he got hurt was super high, and so he got tons of votes that way. Jalen Brown, he's having a good year, but I wouldn't say a transcendent year like what Cat's having. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen both play for a phenomenal team in Cleveland, but aren't putting up like eye-popping all-star type stats. And then you look at the rest of the top vote getters, and it's like Jimmy Butler, discipline issues, has been out for a lot of games. Franz Wagner and Joel Embiid obviously have both missed a ton of games thanks to injury. So I think it's a pretty easy lock for Karl-Anthony Towns to make it in. So I think we could pretty safely chalk him in as an all-star starter at this point. If he's not, I would be frankly shocked. So maybe there's an opportunity for a great podcast tomorrow. If he doesn't make it, I can come on and talk about all that. But I think there's some stats that really show why Jalen Brunson is the best candidate to be the second guard starter in the East. So I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about TalkSpace. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and help you communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. And that's where TalkSpace comes in. TalkSpace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With TalkSpace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, TalkSpace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with TalkSpace when you go to TalkSpace.com/LockedOnNBA and enter promo code SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to TalkSpace.com/LockedOnNBA and enter promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's TalkSpace.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code SPACE80. All right, so the statistical case for Jalen Brunson to make it into the All-Star game as a starter over LaMelo Ball and Damian Lillard. It's an interesting one. I was looking some numbers up, and I was expecting to find Brunson way ahead in certain categories, and he wasn't quite as far ahead as I thought he would be, to be completely honest. And yet, I think that he sort of strikes this right balance between team success, individual success, and efficiency that is going to play well for getting him votes, honestly, because he's playing on one of the better teams in the East. The Knicks are third in the East. Well, so let's start with that. So the Knicks right now, 29-16, third in the East. The Bucks are 24-17, fourth in the East. And the Hornets are 11-29, 13th in the East. So I think that's thing one. you often notice, if a team is going to have multiple all-stars, let alone multiple all-star starters, the team had better be good. They're not going to, you're not going to get multiple all-star players, period, if your team isn't good, but you're not going to get multiple all-star starters unless your team is like one of the best in its conference. The Knicks check that box. For all their ups and downs this year, they're 13 games over 500 at this particular moment in time. They will probably be, I hope like 15 or so games over 500 by the time the All-Star game rolls around. So that's good. That's really good production. They're on pace to, have a 50+ win season. That's good. You need that. And, the Bucks slightly behind there, they're 5 games behind in the win column, 1 game behind in the loss column to the Knicks. So they've just straight up played less games at the moment. But, you can make a case that, the Knicks have been demonstrably better than the Bucks this year, and head-to-head record would support that as well. And then, for the Hornets, it's hard to justify an all-star starter on a team with 11 wins. It's the same deal as like Wembanyama last year didn't really get considered for all-star because the Spurs were just, or, for an all-star starter, despite having a good year, because the Spurs were just not very good last year. So, it's things like that you got to consider. But then if you just talk about the raw averages, these guys are pretty evenly matched. Honestly, they're all fairly close in stats. So Jalen Brunson right now, 26 points per game. Damian Lillard, 25 points per game. LaMelo Ball, 29 points per game. So pretty close there. Jalen Brunson, 7.3 assists per game, which is a career high for him. LaMelo Ball, 7.5 assists per game. Damian Lillard, 7.1 assists per game. So like really close there too. Rebounds, not that they really matter for point guards, but 3 boards a game for Brunson, 5.4 for LaMelo, 4.4 for Lillard. Steals, 0.9 for Brunson, 1.3 for Ball, 1.3 for Lillard. Shooting wise, I think this is where Lillard and Brunson take a little bit of a lead over LaMelo Ball. 48.6% from the field, 39.1% from 3, and 81.7% from the free throw line for Brunson. 44.9% from the field for Lillard, 39.2% from the 3-point line, and 92% from the free throw line. So Brunson shooting a little better overall thanks to his 2-point percentage. Then Lillard slightly edging him in the 3-point category and shooting better from the free throw line. LaMelo Ball trailing in all those categories except for he splits the diff in free throw percentage, but 41.9% from the field, 33.5% from 3, and 83.5% from the free throw line. So definitely lacking in the efficiency there, which, again, is product of being a really good player on ultimately a bad team. Those guys are going to have to shoot more, and he's having a lot more attention paid to him. So you can blame that in part, but the numbers are the numbers. Like he's not shooting as well as the other 2 guys, and it's indisputable. So then if you look at sort of the team impact, I thought it'd be interesting. I start around this time of the season to like the stat of total plus minus. I think it starts to, game to game plus minus can be telling, but it can also be misleading. But I do think that looking at total plus minus as you get throughout the season kind of gives you an idea of like who consistently is winning their minutes with their team. And, it's team dependent too. So Brunson obviously plays in a starting lineup that plays a ton together, the most in the NBA by like almost double. And yet, the team success helps with the plus minus, but the players still has to be playing well, or otherwise the team is going to lose, their minutes while they're on the bench, or while they're lose their minutes while they're playing, and then, look better on the bench or whatever, which affects your plus minus. So Brunson right now is a total plus minus of plus 173. Damian Lillard has a total of plus 42. LaMelo Ball looking at a total plus minus of minus 42. However, I was a little surprised by in the net rating stats. So first off, the net ratings. So when Brunson is on the floor, the Knicks on average per 100 possessions outscore their opponents by 4.7 points. So a plus 4.7 net rating. Damian Lillard has a plus 1 net rating, and LaMelo Ball has a minus 2.9 net rating, which means that, when LaMelo Ball's on the floor, they're getting outscored by 3 points. But that can sort of be factored in as just a function of being on a bad team. the on-off numbers were interesting, and it's kind of interesting how similar Brunson and Lillard situations are, I think. So LaMelo Ball actually wins this one in a landslide, plus 5.9 points on off for LaMelo Ball. That means that per 100 possessions, the Hornets get 5.9 points better with LaMelo Ball on the floor versus him off the floor. So they're still not winning the minutes, but they're getting closer. Whereas Lillard, it's a minus 4.2, and Brunson, it's a minus 5.3 on off. So I think for Brunson and Lillard, it has to do with the fact that they're both playing with bigs that have real MVP cases this year in Giannis Antetokounmpo and Karl-Anthony Towns. I mean, just two guys having absolute monster seasons. Cat's having like a career year. It's why I think both Giannis and Cat are probably shoo-ins to be the starters here in the All-Star game, and why now Brunson and Lillard and LaMelo Ball. But Brunson and Lillard are respectively going after this one spot. So I think it's interesting just to look at the fact that I mean, Brunson, I love him, but he has sort of played second fiddle to Cat this year, at least in terms of what his overall impact has been to the team. I think that you could say without a doubt, Cat has been the most impactful player on the Knicks this year consistently. And that's kind of been seen recently from when he's missed games and how messy the Knicks have looked in some of those games. Not to say that Brunson has not still had an amazing season, because he has. So then, well, if you need proof of that, I pulled just the flashy numbers. So scoring points, doing big things. This is sort of what goes into the All-Star game and All-Star selection. So Brunson so far this year has 150-point game, 140-point game, 13 other games of 30 plus points, and then 8 games with 10 plus assists. LaMelo Ball, strikingly similar, 150-point game, 140-point game, 13 other games with 30 plus, just like Brunson, and then 6 games with 10 plus assists. And then Lillard, no 50-point games, 140-point game, 8 other games with 30 plus, and 7 games with 10 plus assists. So Brunson leads in that category, in the splashy, big scoring games, big assist games, big statistical performances. I think in that regard, it gives him a pretty good case to overtake those two. It's ultimately, the All-Star game is all about being showy and being splashy, scoring lots of points, whatever. And that is kind of what gets rewarded, certainly in fan voting, which makes it a little interesting that Brunson doesn't do better there. But in general, I think that helps Brunson a bit, that he's a scoring guard. He shoots a lot of threes. He has high scoring performances, whatever. It's helpful. It stands out. It stands out in people's minds, whether that's the media, whether that's the players, whether that's hopefully the fans, where hopefully he'll take over the third spot in the fan voting. We'll see how that all goes. But even if Cat and Brunson do make the All-Star game as starters, does it really matter as much this year with this new format? I haven't really talked about the format yet, so I'll explain the new format and react to that next, because I haven't really yet. But first, I want to let you all know about our friends over at Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. That's the Childish Gambino show at Barclays. So much fun. Very thankful I got to see his tour before it got canceled. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I think it's about time I go to MSG. I haven't been there since the beginning of the season. So recently I was looking for tickets to an upcoming Knicks game using the Gametime app. And with Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, so we've talked through Jalen Brunson's All-Star candidacy. We've already established Cat should, barring some huge upset, make it as a starter this year. So if both of them make it as starters, what a great honor, right? You get to start, be the first people on the floor, and yet that seems to mean very little this year. So ironic that the Knicks might have one of their greatest All-Star triumphs in forever. I mean, I'm honestly, is the last time they had 2 starters. Did they ever have that during the Ewing? I don't know if they ever had that during the Ewing era. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe if they both get announced, do we do another show tonight about it? And if for tomorrow, I'll look that up just out of curiosity. But just the irony that the Knicks have not had the 2 high level all-star caliber players like this that could both potentially be starters in forever, and yet it's going to be basically, I don't want to say worthless, but it'll be a great honor, but not at all shown on the court at all this year. So there's a new format for the All-Star game. So I'm going to just read through it just out of the press release from the NBA here, and then sort of react to how this all will go. They announced this actually like a month ago, but I realized Gavin and I haven't talked about it on the show yet. So no better time than the present. So each team now will have, so there's going to be 4 teams that are going to play in a mini tournament now. So each team will have 8 players and be named for a TNT NBA analyst. The 24 NBA All-Star selections will be divided evenly into 3 teams, with the rosters drafted by TNT's Inside the NBA commentators and honorary team general managers Charles Barkley, Shaq, and Kenny Smith. The 3 analysts will make their respective picks for Team Chuck, Team Shaq, and Team Kenny live on TNT during the All-Star draft, which will be conducted on Thursday, February 6th, just before a TNT doubleheader that night. The 4th team will be the winning team from the championship game of the Castrol Rising Stars, the annual showcase of the top first and second year NBA players and NBA G League standouts, which will be played Friday, February 14th during NBA All-Star 2025. TNT analyst and WNBA legend Candace Parker and famous Jalen Brunson not appreciator, just kidding, will serve as honorary GM of the Rising Stars champion known as Team Candace. The 4 teams are going to be participating in the NBA All-Star Game Tournament. Will compete for a prize pool of $1.8 million, with each player on the championship winning team receiving $125,000, each player on the second place team receiving $50,000, each player on the third and fourth place teams receiving $25,000. So, I mean, maybe not as huge of a deal for the big players that are going to be in the game, but whatever. It's I think big deal for the rookies, I guess. But then the scoring was not on this particular press release that I saw here, but I do know that there was something they're playing just to a set score, like playground style. So that'll be fun. They're just playing the first team to whatever score it was. I forget what the score was, but not all that important. It should be kind of neat. I don't know. I'm kind of for it. I think that in general, the All-Star game last year was more boring than I've ever found it. And, they went back to East versus West last year after everybody was like, we need to go back to East versus West. That's what'll fix it. It didn't fix it. It was still boring. Like, I think there just needs to be a little bit of competitiveness injected into this. And I'm not saying that they need to be going all out, because God forbid, like, if anyone would hurt themselves during an All-Star game, that's like the ultimate like thing you never want to see happen. You don't want to see someone, pull something or twist their knee or, whatever, because they're going too hard in an all-star game. And yet, I think that there's something to be said for having it at least appear like a competition. Like it used to be, and I mean, maybe this is just me being an old curmudgeon, but I feel like it used to be, they would just have the score fest, for the first 3 quarters, and then as long as it was somewhat close, the fourth quarter the teams would kind of lock in. And last year it just felt like there was none of that. There was no lock in. There was no teams trying to like be like, okay, like now let's assert our dominance, let's show that the West is better than the East, whatever. And I feel like that did exist in previous years and just didn't last year, and maybe for the last couple years hasn't really existed. Now if they really wanted to fix it, I would say just go back to the Elam ending thing again. I thought the Elam ending was cool, where they would have a target score for the fourth quarter. So whoever was leading going into the fourth quarter, they would add 24 points to their total. And then that's the target score, even for the team that was behind. So if the other team was down 15 points, now they have to score 39 if they want to win the game. The only thing that was kind of a bummer with that was that sometimes the game would end on a free throw, which you don't want to see. And the players did definitely kind of make a concerted effort to like not foul down the stretch of those games. But I remember one of them, I think it was the big Anthony Davis year, ended on a free throw where he got to the free throw line, just canned a free throw, and that was it, game over. And it was kind of like, oh, well, that's a little anticlimactic. But the players all in all kind of made a point to be like, all right, let's end it on a shot. so someone would make a deep three or something or whatever. But then you also kind of ran into like, it was kind of a joke when like one team would be up by a lot. And then, you'd have Steph Curry just like pulling up from past half court to try to end it on a over half court shot, or like Dame Lillard, I think, was doing that the one year when he was on the team that was winning. Like, it's just like, all right, it does still kind of turn into a joke at a certain point. But like last year's game was just like nobody cared. There was no stakes, and there was no like hit a shot to win the game moment either. So it was kind of just like, all right, well, this just kind of is boring all around because it's just a bunch of dudes shooting threes. Like, this is the real curmudgeon you take from me is like, I miss when the All-Star game used to be all about like dunks and stuff and like doing fancy stuff like that. Like, I was a huge T-Mac fan back in the day. So like the T-Mac, like off the backboard and like through the legs dunks, and Vince Carter going for like crazy dunks during the game. And even LeBron back in the day would hit some like crazy stuff during the game, and try to make a little more of a spectacle out of it. And I feel like now you get like 3 big dunks in any given All-Star game. And then there's even just like, I mean, a lot of guys like the bigs and whatever will literally like do the lightest possible like two-hand dunks, just like nobody's contesting me. I'm just gonna like literally lay this into the hoop while touching the rim. And it just gets kind of boring. I don't know. I don't really see the plus side of it, I guess. I don't know. It didn't really entertain me. I miss the days when it was more about like big splashy dunks and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a little bit of an old man. But this new format, I do think, offers the opportunity for it to actually be competitive. I think adding the rising stars in there is really smart because I think that's the one thing that will like maybe the first game between the two all-star teams is a joke, but if the rising star team beats their first opponent and makes it to the final, I think you're going to see whatever winning team of all stars from that first round is going to come in wanting to like rip their head off and be like, no, we're not losing to a team of first and second year players. Like, that is just not happening. Or maybe it leads to a wake up call, and it's the rookie and sophomore team does win in the first year, and the all stars then go, man, we got to be better next year. Or the converse is that the all stars just care so little still, or in protest, some of the all-stars or all-star caliber players that were asked about the format have definitely been pretty vocal about like, I don't really like it. I think it's kind of stupid. Maybe in protest, some players are just like, yeah, I'm just gonna like not try now. I feel like that would be the ultimate bummer of this whole situation, is if the all-stars just like boycotted, almost like quiet quit on the whole thing. So that's definitely the worst possible outcome. But hopefully everybody's invested in just putting on a fun show for the fans, doing something that'll be entertaining to watch on TV and in person. I don't know. I think this one has promise if everybody buys into the concept, but that's a big if. And it seems like no matter what concept is put in for All-Star, buy-in is hard. So we'll see. Maybe this is the magic formula. Maybe it's the money too. I mean, the prize pool is somewhat similar to the NBA Cup, which has caught on in some way. I mean, there's always been prize money for making the All-Star game. It's just less discussed, but I mean, maybe the fact that now young players are involved in it too. There's a lot of talk during the NBA Cup about and the first iteration of the in-season tournament where players were talking about how, they want to give winnings to their end of bench guys, rookies, whatever. So I don't know. Maybe this is the magic sauce. Maybe it's not, but we'll see as this whole thing plays out. But hopefully, Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns will both be honorary starters in the thing and starting for their respective teams, whatever they get drafted to in this 4-team tournament. But I think it has potential to be cool. Anyway, we'll talk about it more leading up. Hopefully I can get Gavin's thoughts on it because maybe he thinks differently. I don't know. I think it's kind of nifty though. But till next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.